That's right.
No, we'll start. We'll start. I'd like to call to order, and we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dr. Poole, could you give us the invocation, please?
Can you hear me, John?
Yes, I can.
All right. Grace and peace be with you this day from God our Father. Would you all please bow your heads for the invocation? Let us pray. God our Father, may your Holy Spirit come upon all of us as we gather here this election evening. We are grateful for this opportunity to honor and thank those who have led Flotilla 12-6 this past year, first for their dedication to the ideals of the auxiliary, and second, for their personal sacrifices they have made to bring these ideals to many others. We also ask for your wisdom, vision, and courage to be given to those who will be elected or appointed to office this year. Reward their work and hours as we, the auxiliary, continue to conduct safety patrols, teach boating safety, conduct vessel examinations for the public, and support the Coast Guard in its non-law enforcement mission. Keep us always in your care, O God, as your grace, mercy, and love endures forever. This we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. So tonight we have a guest. We have Mary Corbett, which is an MST1 Marine Safety Technician First Class. She'll be speaking, and I believe she has a PowerPoint presentation for us. And first, I'd like to just get a few things out of the way. I'd like to have 3 months worth of minutes that have to be voted on. I sent out copies of all the minutes, so everybody should have read it. And I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes as written for all 3 months.
Okay.
I'll make the motion that we accept all the minutes.
Okay,
I'll
second?
second it.
Second, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I'd like John to read the finance for us, please.
Okay, John, for the month, receipts of $1,256.07, disbursements of $160.04 for a net of $1,096.03. You should have received a copy of the detailed report that John had sent out to everyone. The balance in the accounts as of the end of September was $12,780.92. As far as dues collection, we still have about 12 members that are outstanding. Second notices have been mailed to them, as well as registered letters from John to them, basically informing them that the disenrollment process will begin. They have the opportunity to submit their dues after receipt of that letter, but if not, they will be disenrolled. So, any questions?
Okay. So I'd like Mary Corbett to go ahead with her, and thank you for being our guest speaker for October. So you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm going to attempt to share my screen to show the PowerPoint presentation. All right. There we go. All right. Can everybody see the slideshow?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So So as you said, I'm a marine science technician. Basically, we are involved with the environment in marine safety of the ports and waterways. So for the first slide, just marine safety in the Coast Guard is a brief overview of what we do. Our general purpose is ensuring the safety and security of the ports and the waterways while protecting the environment and also facilitating commerce. So there's two main areas that we do this. The field is broken up into prevention and then marine environmental response. Additionally, we often get pulled into the area of emergency management force readiness, which until very recently was known as planning. Pretty much any rate can participate in the emergency management side, but MSTs for some reason seem to get pulled into that quite a lot. Does anybody have any questions about our general purpose? Great. All right, for myself personally, I am a reservist. I'm currently on active duty orders. I joined in 2011, just directly into the reserves. So the first few years, I strictly did just kind of the 2 weeks of ADT and the weekend month drilling. So just kind of got the basic out of the way and started working on some of my qualifications. And then in 2016, I got called up for to help out with emergency management for the incident command post, following up after Hurricane, forgive me, it's a pre-Hurricane Irma, which it came through in 2016 and just affected us minorly compared to the following hurricanes. And then after that, tended to be kind of a habit. Every hurricane season, I got the opportunity to volunteer and come on board for 30 days or more. I was deployed down to Florida for Irma response, and then for about 3 months there, and then followed up with a month in Puerto Rico, also in the incident management team, helping to manage that response. And then the last few years for Florence and Michael, I got called up as well to help manage that. Most recently, I'm currently on active duty orders from since April, and I'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. All right, so give you an overview of kind of what we do for safety-wise. As an MST, we get a lot of questions about what we do. When I joined, I thought it was going to be very hands-on environmental. Kept seeing references to scrubbing ducks. However, quickly learned, right? And I actually have scrubbed a duck, but outside of the Coast Guard. Quickly learned that that's not exactly what we do. We do obviously care very much about the environmental safety and cleanliness, and that's a big part of what we do, but it's not down to that level. It's more a lot of pointing and directing. The other thing that we get a lot of questions about is salvage operations. So typically we don't do that. The boat down here in the bottom of the picture on its side, we care about it, but as far as the Coast Guard jurisdiction is, we really only care about what hazardous materials it might have that leak into the environment. The boat itself, kind of out of the navigational channel like that, really wouldn't be a concern for us, unfortunately. That would go over to the Army Corps of Engineers. And one exception to that is Hurricane Irma response. The Coast Guard actually was working for FEMA, and they were doing a lot of salvaging of boats. So it was very confusing, I think, for the general public as to what we were doing. A lot of times, the boat like this, at least in Charleston, if it was regular operations, we'd check it out. We might have to write it or get on it or have contractors go on it to remove the hazardous material, and then we would just leave it, whether it was raising it up out of the water and then putting it back down, or just leaving it as it sat. For the operations in Florida, we actually oversaw mostly the safety and also just making sure that as far as the hazardous material is cleaned up properly from a variety of vessels that had been displaced by the storm. And that was really done under FEMA's coverage, and we were just kind of helping them out. But it does provide a confusing situation for people who aren't quite sure what we do and why we would move some boats, not others, or why we did it then and not normally. Do anybody have any questions about our connection to salvage operations?
No, ma'am.
Great. All right.
Were you
Good.
at all involved? How was the Coast Guard involved with that ship that capsized coming out of Georgia?
Yes. So again, the two facets to that. One is the environmental side. So it does have a lot of fuel on there. It's got a lot of vehicles on there that also have hazardous material on it. And then of course, it's navigational hazard. So in that case, we have a little more leeway to get involved. I'm honestly not sure of where our jurisdiction fits in. We have a unified command there, and I believe what they're doing is directing the cleanup and removal of it. So we were very concerned about as long as there's a threat of pollution, then we do have the jurisdiction to step in and do things to the vessel. So in that case, we have people out there on the ground daily watching for pollution threats, and they've found some in the past. I'm not sure how much of ongoing that is, but I know they're going to begin doing the cutting process on the vessel soon, and there's a good bit of hazardous material still possible on the boat, so they're going to be watching that, and that's where we're mainly involved in.
I believe that's the Golden Ray out of South Korea.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Can you also maybe comment on the not the salvaging, but maybe talking about what role you play in the control or monitoring of vessels, like for example the shrimper that's outside of Sham Creek.
Right.
Seems to have so just kind of like, because we are very involved, obviously that's our AOR, and so we see it there. So what was your original kind of like, what role did you play early on, and what role do you play in maintaining or controlling or watching or monitoring?
Absolutely. So you're referring to the shrimping vessel that went down kind of near Crab Bank?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Yes, actually, that's one that I can speak to very well. I was not involved a whole lot, but I did help with a little bit of monitoring, and have been watching the situation unfold. So that particular vessel was a privately owned vessel that had been anchored out, as a lot of older boats tend to get anchored out. And I believe had been encouraging the owner to try to clean it up, just because there was a possibility of having hazardous material leaks, some oil pollution. Batteries is another source, and even things like cleaning items that could be on the boat, fire extinguishers, things like that. So at the time, she'd just been telling us, our concern is that if it's a boat and it's just the hull and it sinks right where it is, it's shallow water, it's not going to affect navigation, so we're really not concerned about that. But she couldn't guarantee whether or not there was any hazardous material on it. So we were just keeping an eye on it at the time, and then a storm came through this summer and sank the boat. So at the time, if the boat sinks and it's not causing any pollution, and the owner claims that there's no sources of pollution on board, we really don't have any jurisdiction to do anything. So we were just monitoring it daily for a few days, and then I think it sank, and then the storm came. And then after the storm came, we noticed there was considerable amount of sheen on the boat. So at that point, we had the jurisdiction to get involved. And when that happens, our first hope is that the owner, as a responsible party, has the means and wherewithal to take care of it. And we just monitor and make sure that they're doing it safely and effectively. In this case, the owner was either unwilling or unable to take control of it. So that's when we were able to come in as a federal on-scene coordinator and basically open up the National Pollution Fund Center, through the National Pollution Fund Center, a fund that is there, the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund, to pay for the cleanup of the hazardous material. So it's basically what we did, and we go forward with that process and contact an OSRO, who is a oil spill response organization in the area, and then we just kind of oversee what they do. And in that case, they were able to pull the hazardous material off of one of the tanks, and they did find some. And then, so based on that finding, we decided that it wasn't, we didn't really trust the word of the owner, and that we would need to sting the other tank. But in order to do that, because the way the vessel is sitting, we had to raise it to get to the tank. So we had to get a barge and a crane, raise it to get that fuel off. And then once that was off, we removed all the hazardous material. And unfortunately, we did all the hard work at that point, but and we're even able to say, we can stop the process at any time and turn it back over to the owner. And attempted to, but she was unable to even take it at that point and dispose of it. So we had to put it back down. And unfortunately, it's an eyesore, and at some point could be a cause for breaking up and causing other issues. But we just don't have the jurisdiction to keep going with the actual remains of the vessel at that point.
Does your group ever actually do any of the real cleanup, or you just supervise it?
We pretty much supervise. I'm trying to think. We do go through training of some of the methods of cleanup, but essentially with the expense and the training, it's more cost effective to direct. So we're pretty much supervisory capacity there. Any other questions about the removal of hazardous materials?
I have a question. Do you
Okay.
handle basically only, say, environmental spills in the water, or you also handle environmental oil spills on land as well?
So it depends. So we actually work very closely with the EPA and their local agency, state agency, DHEC. So our jurisdiction is in the coastal and inland zones. Some of that is not always on water. One of those key factors is there a pathway for that product to enter the water? So sometimes what we would call is like some kind of a vehicle that has had an accident and is leaking a fluid onto a roadway, and there might be a drain that eventually makes its way down to our waters. In that case, we could be involved with that. Transformers, a lot of times the material in those, because their location again is something that we would be involved with. Pretty much anything, just as a very rough estimate, saying of where our jurisdiction is versus EPA's is to the east of Highway 7. Yeah, so east of Highway 17, between, as far as sector Charleston, between the border of North Carolina and South Carolina, from that line all the way down south to the Savannah River, actually down to the Georgia-Florida border, but that portion is actually covered by MSU Savannah, which is under sector Charleston. And then we do mostly what we deal with is oil products, but we also would cover hazardous material under CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Recovery Liability Act. And if there's something that released in the air that could also affect the waterway, we may be involved in that as well. But a lot of times we'll coordinate with DHEC, and it'll just depend on who has the best resources and the closest availability to respond as well.
The reason I asked, I used to live in New York, which you could tell
Yes.
by my accent. And I worked for the utility up there, Con Edison. And Con Edison has a lot of high tension I should say high voltage feeders that run on the ground, and the way they insulate them, they run high pressure oil on them at about 250 pounds. And from time to time, they have leaks. They have holding tanks on either end of the feeder. And when there's a loss of oil, then they send a search team out. And I know that the Coast Guard always got involved when they found a major oil leak in the street. And that's why I asked. And I believe if they have underground feeders, they do the same thing over here too, but most everything's overhead.
Right.
And then we're going to ask you at the end of your presentation, if you have a hotline number that we can have, that if we're out in the water on a patrol and we see a pipe coming out somewhere and there's cooking grease coming out because some restaurant's letting go of their oil, that we can call.
Absolutely. So, and that's also a great things that, we always think about like oil as like a fuel product or a hazardous material, but there's a whole lot of other oils that are animal products that are also would be something that we would be interested in. So it's an excellent example with the cooking oil coming out, and that's definitely something that would be really beneficial for us to have your eyes out there looking out for things like that.
Mary, what about your role as far as sewage goes?
So sewage, we actually do not regulate. So it's one of there's 6 portions to the ARPL, which is basically an international treaty on pollution. And sewage is not one that we regulate, unfortunately. In fact, we cleaned up a vessel the other day, and it was sunk, and the diver was checking different tanks, and he found the sewage tank, and it was explicitly, don't touch that one. We're not, we unfortunately don't care about that one. We do, but we don't have jurisdiction over that.
Can you comment also on the uncontrolled, I guess, release, the plastic, Charleston Harbor, and then there was certainly some big talk and some uncontrolled release of possible plastic components from the ports that ended up on the Sullivan's Island beach. And so what role, if any, I mean, did it really only became a state issue, or when would something that's released out of a container of some sort coming on from an inbound ship or outbound ship would become the responsibility of the preview of the Coast Guard versus local authorities?
Right, that I'm not sure as far as plastic. I can find that out. I'll write that down. I do know there was a lot of discussion about it, but I don't know where our role is with that. I can say though, if it's a container, it has hazardous material or some kind of explosive material and has a leak, we would definitely get involved in it at that point. We also have jurisdiction over, say, if there's a drum that's floating around unidentified, we would have, that would be something that we would have jurisdiction over as well as part of the CERCLA side. All right, but I'll find out about the plastics release and get back to you, because I'm pretty sure I can get an answer on that pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So just kind of heading back towards the slides, was going to give a little bit more detailed of overview of what we do in some of the areas as marine science technicians. So half of the field, maybe over half the field is prevention, which is the department that I'm normally assigned to. And that is broken up into several divisions. So just going through it, we have inspections, and that we touched on a little bit earlier. We inspect facilities, containers, we cover explosive loads and transfer monitors. So facility-wise, we have 13 facilities that we monitor here in Charleston, and they transfer all kinds of manner of things, anything from the cars and the passenger ferry terminal downtown to Kinder Morgan does paraxylene products, also oil products, and we're monitoring a new one going in. A lot of the container facilities we'll do, so Wando, North Charleston, and Veterans Terminal are big facilities that we work with a lot. And then, so within those facilities, we do both safety and security checks. So safety is making sure that they're doing anything for the product, for containment of the product, both for people and for the environment. And then for security, just a lot of it is just making sure that nobody can, that they're taking the precautions so that nobody can come in and do any kind of sabotage. And then within those facilities, so for Wando in North Charleston, they can we transport a lot of the containers that we see going in and out. So we do inspect those containers themselves, and we inspect general cargo for just structural issues, and then we'll inspect hazardous material to make sure that they're being packaged appropriately, and then we'll also just do random checks and make sure that there are no hazardous materials being shipped incorrectly, maybe unmarked. The reasons that the shippers may do this is that it's a lot less expensive to ship things as general cargo than hazardous material because of the packaging. And then sometimes somebody could just be deliberately trying to sneak something out of the country. Several years ago, we discovered products coming through, going to Iran. It was, I can't remember the exact product, but they're trying to pass it off as some kind of lube oil, which it most definitely wasn't. So it was a pretty big bust several years ago, and it just caught on a routine inspection. The other thing we do a lot here, we monitor explosive loads. So the primary purpose for that is just the safety of the community. Vessels will come in periodically with maybe 1 or 2 containers with explosives on it. And then occasionally we'll get some military type vessels that are completely full of explosives. And so we make sure that they're taking the correct precautions and that they don't stay on the port any longer than necessary. And then lastly, under inspections, we do transfer monitors, which is where we will just kind of spot check any vessel or facility that's transferring oil or a bulk liquid hazardous product has to notify us of that, so we can go out and do a surprise check and make sure everybody's taking all the appropriate precautions, especially if if any of them have had a history of having a spill or discharge. Just lets them know that we're watching them, and it helps prevent any accidents from happening like that. Does anybody have any questions on the facility inspections or related inspections?
Mary, when you say facilities, you mean buildings and like that, because we say facilities for our boats, so.
Oh, sure. Yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. So I mean, like port terminals, so like Wando Terminal, the passenger ferry terminal where the Carnival ships come out of, Columbus Terminal downtown, BP Terminal up the Cooper River. So those are what we refer to as facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Very different. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So on the vessel side, one of our big jobs is port state control, and we do foreign commercial vessel exams. So primarily they're safety, but also security exams. So we'll go on and usually have a team of 2 to 6 technicians who go on and cover the boat from top to bottom, making sure that everything's functioning safely and properly from the engine all the way up to the deck. And then they have their required safety gear for in all their lifeboats, that all their everything's functioning properly. And then we also do like health, not necessarily health for the crew, but conditions for the crew. So we'll look and make sure that they have proper stores, proper cooking facilities, proper rooms, running hot and cold water. And then we go through all the documents on the vessel as well. So it can be a very, very involved process. And it's recently changed a good bit and become a little less rigorous, but still a very important part of what we do. One thing that we do with that is related to the environment, you may have seen we've had a couple of cases in the last few years, what's called a magic pipe case, which is where vessels are allowed to discharge some product from their oily water separator if it's diluted to a certain amount. And so they have certain protocols that they can follow and do it legally. However, it's expensive. It's a lot easier for them to just get rid of it overboard. And so on occasion, we'll find a vessel or crew that has done that. We had that twice in probably the last 5 years here, where we've had a whistleblower who said, let us know that that's occurred, and gone through prosecution of the company. So, and usually that happens offshore, but of course we get note of it and do the investigation here when it's in port. All right, so moving on. So we do a wide variety of things. So continuing on with the inspections, we also do domestic vessel inspections. So any type of U.S. flag commercial vessels, so passenger vessels, commercial fishing vessels, charter boats, all those we do inspect. We also have a section of investigations, which is a really interesting area that some of you may want to get involved in. And then for investigations, we're investigating marine casualties, which for us, we can do, our jurisdiction is over any U.S. flagged vessel anywhere in the world. So, I mean, it could be something as somebody's on a cruise and they pass away, and even though maybe it was a pre-existing condition, but it's still something that we might be alerted of and have to investigate. Here locally, a big push for us is cracking down on illegal charters. So usually we see this in the form of either a six-pack charter captain who's taking on more people than he is supposed to, or you might see somebody who just doesn't have a captain's license at all and is doing charters, and that's just a concern primarily for the safety standpoint of that. The other thing that our investigators will do is check up on merchant mariners. So if there's like a drug or an alcohol incident or a number of other violations that they could do that might be worthy of revoking their license, but investigators will work on that as well. And then we have waterways management. So that a big section for us in Charleston is marine events. So we have somebody who pretty much is all their entire job, maybe not this year, but they generally will look at permits for marine events and determine if there's a safety zone needed or if it's even safe to allow that event to take place in the location where they need it. We also do, of course, in the effort of facilitating commerce, our job is to make sure that the marine transportation system is running properly, and we'll work with the recovery process if there's either something happens like the Golden Ray incident down in Brunswick, or if there's a hurricane and we have to shut that port down and then have to get it back up and running as quickly as possible. And one of the tools that we use to do that is called the Common Assessment and Reporting Tool, which is it's a really, really cool tool. You can access it through any computer. It may be something that we can have, would be an area that you could be helpful in. Any internet access based computer could get to it, and you put in different features of the port. So you would say all of our navigation aids would be in there, ranges, the port in general, waterway stretches, and then you could report up whether they were functional or in need of repair, or in what stage of repair. So that way, anybody, you can look at it from from at the lowest level up to the present. You can even look at it and see post a hurricane what our status is. It's a super useful tool. All right. So any questions on the prevention side? Great. All right. So now moving into environmental. Oh, sorry.
Mary, this is John. I just wanted to add something before. You said something interesting about bringing water where it doesn't belong. I just wanted to add on to that I know that many of these cruise ships, they have water ballast, and they take on water in one port, and the water that they have might necessarily not be agreeable to another port if they let it go, where it could kill the marine life.
Exactly. Yes. So
on top of that, if they have to release it, they have to release it where they took it from.
Exactly. So there's regulations on where they can release it. And a large part of that is nuisance species that could be in there. So just like if you have a boat that goes in some areas can pick up mussels, the ballast water can take up small species that, as you said, when released can really do damage to a different system. So that would also come under our jurisdiction. So it'd be something we would investigate for sure.
Okay.
All right. So on the marine environmental response side, we really have two roles as a marine science technician. So our basic role is a pollution responder. And I think this is an area where we could really use a lot of help. So that covers the initial investigation of a report. So we get 24 hours a day calls, anything that somebody reports, they might see a weathered sheen, or they might see a serious discharge gets reported into us, and then we've got to find a way to get out to it, which we don't always have great access to boats. So sometimes if it's something that's accessible by water only, it can take us a while to get out to, and by the time we get out there, it's gone. And then yeah, so we go out, make sure that there is actually something that needs to be responded to. It could be just a natural sheen that shows up, and then somebody maybe does not know how to recognize if it's a product that is actually harmful to the environment. And then we'll also, during that initial investigation, if it is a product or that needs to be responded to, we'll try to identify the source and the responsible party and make sure that they're cleaning up appropriately, or if not, then we're gonna reach out and kind of bump it up to the federal on-scene coordinator representative, similar to the case that happened at Shim Creek. And that's basically when either the responsible party isn't known or isn't able or is not properly cleaning up the spill. So we had over 4th of July, we had a commercial fishing vessel that went down in Beaufort, and the owner was trying his best. It was a complete accident that the vessel went over, but it had, I think, a capacity of about 1,000 gallons and 1,500 gallons, and probably had close to 1,000 gallons of fuel on board. Wasn't discharging a whole lot, but it was a little bit. And he was trying his best to get the boat righted and cleaned up. And for us, as long as he was making the effort and had a good chance of doing it, we were fine with that. We just would go down daily and just kind of watch. And if he had any questions, we offered him contacts for the oil spill companies to try to help him out. And unfortunately, he didn't have a whole lot of money, so he was jury rigging a lot of items. We ended up giving him what's called an administrative order, which basically gives him a timeline and kind of a plan of what he needs to do, so that we won't have to take it over. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to meet that, so we had to take over the cleanup, hazardous material cleanup portion of the event, which is always unfortunate, especially when you have somebody who's trying to do the right thing, because it's just going to cost them a lot more when we do it, because they do eventually, the government will come after them to try to repay as much of that as possible. But for him, all we did was we pulled the hazardous material out of the boat, and then he still had a good plan to try to right the boat. He just needed more time, so we left that to him, and within 2 weeks he was able to recover the boat. And I heard a report of it that he's back underway about a month ago. So it's a good ending, and unfortunately it's going to cost him a little more, but that's a very not very common generally, but that's a pretty typical use for the federal on-scene coordinator representative role. Does anybody have any questions about those two roles for us? Okay, great. So moving on. The other thing was the emergency force readiness department, so it touched on. So that will respond to disaster response by helping with the incident management, making sure the port is able to close and reopen safely. A lot of times we'll close the port to commercial traffic as, say, as a hurricane approaches at a certain point, and then we try to reopen it as quickly as possible. Part of the reopening process involves checking out all the main navigation routes. The Army Corps of Engineers and some of the dredging companies will actually go out and do scans to make sure there's nothing underwater. But it's also really helpful to have, eyes out on the really good thing that you guys can help us out with as well. Just going out in boats and making sure there's navigation aids are functioning properly. As an MST, a lot of times we get pulled into the situation and resource management side of that, which is really interesting. You get to kind of pass the information back up from the ground up the chain, and then make sure that we have enough people, whether it's Coast Guard, other agencies like NOAA or auxiliarists or volunteers. Some of the things that we can do under ICF this year, COVID-19 has been a huge thing Coast Guard wide that we've done under ICF, and our purpose for that is to maintain the health and safety of the workforce and complete the mission, or make sure that our members are able to complete the mission. So for the first few months, we pretty much had skeleton crews and tried to keep people out of the office, but we need to keep tabs on them and make sure they were ready to go out if they needed to respond. Other things we use it for, something you guys might use it for is just normal events. So we use it for the State of the Coast Guard address earlier this year. It's just a great tool for event management. Any questions on emergency management? Great, all right. And then I've got a little bit about this, but just to kind of touch on what I've done in the Coast Guard. If anybody's interested, if anybody has any siblings, friends, children interested in joining the Coast Guard, the two options right now, active duty and reserve. They're really pushing to get people to join or to retain, even for reservists to come active duty, just because, especially with COVID, our numbers for people entering have been down. So it kind of goes in a cyclical pattern, but right now we're definitely trying to get more people to join. The benefits between the two, there's some age requirements. So when I came in, I didn't meet the age requirement for active duty, so reserve was really the only option. It's been really nice for me. On the reserve side, you have a lot more flexibility. You can have a regular job, and you have a little bit more variety in the roles that you can sign up for. The other thing, and I think this applies to auxiliarists, is that your career, your direction is very individual driven in the reserve, versus in the active duty. I think you kind of get slotted into a role and your command drives you a lot. You're still individually driven, but you really see the difference on the reserve side, and I think on the auxiliarist too, as far as your individual level of motivation and desire and what you want to do. So currently, I've been on order since April 12th, and I'm scheduled to go off on April 6th. I'm part of the COVID response team in the situation unit. So essentially, I'll look at news a lot and see what's going on COVID-wise in the world, Coast Guard-wide, and report that up, and then tracking our people here. So I do a lot of contact tracing. We've done a lot lately, especially with the temperature changes. I think people are having symptoms that could be COVID, could be not COVID, but just for safety, we have to treat everything as if it's COVID until it's cleared otherwise. The other thing that I've been able to do during this time is to do departmental cross training. Another advantage of being reservist, have a little more flexibility. So I've picked to strengthen my skills in marine environmental response, and then helped out a little bit in prevention as well. The next few slides, and we're probably running tight on time, but I was just going to mention this vessel up top, another example of our not doing salvage. This actually was in Hurricane Irma and showed up on Cocoa Beach. An article about it in the Wall Street Journal. It was an interesting case because the Coast Guard didn't have jurisdiction of it, but because we were working under FEMA, we were given the authority to have it removed. However, county owned the beach and the local town owned the access to the beach, and the local town did not want us to go through a small section of sea oats to remove the vessel, even with remediation. So eventually the result was that we removed the hazardous material off the vessel and left it on the beach. I believe it was demolished by the city or the county last year, finally. But for a couple of years it was there, and got there one time and kids were swinging off the halyards. So it's definitely a situation where jurisdiction of different governments can be a tricky thing to navigate, and potentially a hazardous, just physical item out there. And then Plum Island, a case that probably a lot of you are familiar with, is the largest release or discharge that we've had here in probably 10 years or so. So you can see on the left the initial response. Those are absorbent pads that the OSRA put out to start absorbing the product, and then the condition of the marsh as it should be on the right. And in that case, we didn't federalize it. The wastewater treatment plant was taking care of it. We were there just to make sure it was done as quickly, efficiently as possible. Another concern for us is that while we're cleaning up, we don't want to damage the environment more than the product itself. So sometimes the best solution, obviously not in this case, but at a certain point it was to not go out there and destroy the marsh while they're out there trying to get a little vestiges of the product. And again, this is a great use for you guys where it traveled obviously a lot more places than right in that direct creek. So just having eyes out there, recognizing there may be collection points where the product could appear, and knowing where that is helpful for us for responding. All right, so I did a little research on the roles that auxiliaries could have in the infield, and there are a lot of possibilities. The ones I have listed on the slideshow were pulled off the auxiliaries website as options, but then it is also up to the local sector. So going back into kind of the same topics that we spoke about earlier, I've broken up the qualifications under each division. The one that I feel like probably is an easy one to work on and a very useful one for us would be the Marine Environmental Response, the Assistant Pollution Responder. And then if you had a number of people getting that and want to go further, the Auxiliary Assistant Marine Enforcement Investigator is kind of an offshoot of that. So it's a little bit more towards investigations, but it's a natural follow-on. So this would be two topics that I would recommend working towards. And here's some more with all the vessel inspections and exams. So if you're interested in that, there's a lot of options, but would just require coordination with the sector to see what they want to work with. I did speak to a couple of other members, so and here's several of the prevention outreach options. Wouldn't really require any training, but it's things that you could engage with. Maybe not right now, but when things go back to more normal and you're doing boating safety courses is a huge area that would be helpful. Courtesy exams would be fantastic, would probably be very helpful for making people aware, especially with illegal charters. And then just things like the Living Marine Mammals Resources or the Good Mate program, just raising awareness and even just talking to kids so that they grow up looking out for the right things and doing the right things on the water. And then lastly, so your training and qualification options, there's the Marine Safety ribbon, and there's the classes listed that are required for that. So you could do that pretty easily. Most of those classes, I believe, are online. And then the Marine Safety Trident device, the gold pin on the right there, you can achieve that after you've received 4 of the Marine Safety Performance Qualification Standards. So the pollution responder, enforcement, maybe some of the examiner options or prevention qualifications, and then after 5 years of service in support of that. So we have a very, it's really the same requirement for our MPen, but just of course Coast Guard, the regular P2S standards, which just looking at your pollution responder, pollution performance qualification standard, it actually tracks very closely with ours. So I would definitely recommend that for professional development. As far as training, I reached out to MSTC Hendricks, who is the reserve chief in marine environmental response. He's definitely interested. He's a great trainer and teacher, and was interested in coordinating if you have interest, a training class to kind of go through the qualification in over a couple of days, over a weekend, during the drill weekend, or perhaps setting up a Zoom meeting. Again, the maritime enforcement investigator may be a qual that would follow after that. I spoke with Ensign Perkins, who is the active duty chief of marine environmental response, and he's needs to do some looking into the options, but he was pretty interested in having you work in some way or another in the pollution response. A lot of times what happens is we have one person on duty. We have three petty officers normally assigned to response, so it's not very many to start with, and we're required to have 2 out at a time on a case. So if we're responding to something in Georgetown and a call comes in Charleston, it's fantastic to have somebody who's trained and knows what they're doing, maybe can access a little quicker even than us to respond to a call that happens in Charleston or elsewhere if you're willing to go further as well. All right, that being said, that's kind of all the topics I had planned. So does anybody have any questions?
Mary, this is John Fresanito. Do you have that hotline number for us?
Yes, so there's 2 numbers. So, and if you're discovering something at first, the legal requirement actually by law, it should first be reported to the National Response Center. And that number is 1-800-424-8802. And they'll basically take down your information, as much information as you can provide about whatever item you see. So if it's a machine, like the color, size, description, weather, if you see, particularly helpful is if you see it discharging, if you can pinpoint a source, a vessel, or fixed source, individual responsible, it's very helpful. So this on the national level, once you make that report, it will go directly to the local unit. So wherever you are in the States, you could call that number. If you're in our AOR, we'll get that report very quickly. It'll go through our command center. And then generally what happens is we'll call the responsible party back. However, I also have a local, we can call our command center and give you that number as well. Call them directly if for some reason you didn't want to call their NRC, or sometimes the National Response Center takes a little while to get the report to us. So you can always call a command center and then call them, or they can call the National Response Center on your behalf. For the Charleston Command Center, that number is 843-740-7050. And then one more number that I have for you is our duty phone. So that one is manned 24/7. And it is 843-296-5516. Additionally, because that is a cell phone, you can text pictures. So if you saw a sheen, one of the things that's really helpful for us is, or any kind of discharge, is a picture of it. If you can capture a picture of product coming out of the vessel, that's a really great basis for a case. That is also very helpful for us.
Mary, what about invasive species?
Yes, ma'am. So we do regulate that. I would have to look up that information. But yeah, certainly mussels is a big one. In different areas of the country, different types of fish are watched really closely. I'm not sure that we have any fish in particular here, but the invasive species in this area would normally be as a result of ballast water discharge. Would probably be the primary source, and that would generally be on the larger vessels. Another way that invasive species gets transferred is through boats, which I don't know that we have any issues of that here. So like recreational boats that maybe they go somewhere up to like Michigan. I think there's some in that area. Get something on the hull and then don't clean their boat properly and put it in the water here. I believe that would be under our enforcement division. So in the MST field, we don't necessarily regulate that, but Lieutenant Corbett is the enforcement chief. Not related to me, but she'd probably be a good contact to go further with the invasive species side as far as what we see here. I can also find that out for you as well.
For some people, MST Corbett, just to let you know, we have a few people who are MS certified, but the Flotilla has been actually very involved in participating in the area contingency planning, including with the folks with Van Tyne. Supported the tabletop exercises the last 4 years, including the very large one a couple of years ago. So for some people on this call who might be interested, even if you look at the PQS and look a little daunting, consider there is actually a full exercise plan every year, and it comes in different sizes. And it's going to be a mid-size exercise plan for, I think, June or July of this year for Charleston. And so if you're interested in actually just participating and observing, I know Luke and Mike Young and others have done manning the registration table and watching and supporting the exercises. So there's a few, I know Walter was involved. I'm on the committee supporting as an observer and so forth. So for some of you who might be interested, consider that there's indirect ways of just supporting the effort without necessarily just going just for the PQS if it's looking a little daunting.
Right, exactly. And that actually, it flows really well with the marine environmental mission, because that's kind of where we base our cleanup strategies is off the area contingency plan. So that's a great kind of a joint project that will give you another viewpoint of the environmental response side.
Okay, Mary, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you like. You don't have to.
Yes,
and thank you. We loved having you. We always learn something when we have somebody from the Coast Guard here explaining their position and what it entails.
Thank you, sir. And if anybody has any questions, I'll give Don my email address. So feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, moving on with the meeting. We had a division meeting this past Tuesday, and they didn't really say much, but they do need IS officers. And if anybody's interested, they'll train you. Susan Hastings, the SO IS, is putting together a class. The only other thing that they said, that boat sales have been gone through the roof, selling boats. If you go out on 17 and you pass seals, you'll see hardly any Grady Whites or anything on the premises, because they're not producing any boats. They're selling out on everything. I don't think you can even buy a kayak anywhere. But because they sold all the boats, there's that many more untrained people on the water, and also boat accidents have been up. So, and then we haven't been out there really training anybody. So there's going to be a big push for that. Other than that, I just wanted to speak briefly. We have the election coming up in November, and I just wanted to speak about, we have some new people here, and I just wanted to share that in order to run for office, besides all your requirements, you have to submit a letter. It's called a letter of intent. And what is on a letter of intent? You have your name and how many years you're in the auxiliary and then whatever awards you got and what offices you held and things like that. It's sort of like you're telling a little about yourself and you want to sell yourself, but you still have to have all your training in order and everything else. But that's what a letter of intent is. And then the very last part of the letter of intent is that you're willing to serve, and it's only on 1 year at a time. You're willing to serve and whatever it takes. And then that's all there is to it. Now when we have this election, we're going to have a contested election. What contested means is that somebody's going to run against somebody. And the way they're going to run this, we're going to use our Zoom program, and the district is going to take over the meeting at the very beginning to run the election. And the way they're going to run it, we have to submit the names and employee numbers and email addresses of all the members of the flotilla 2 weeks prior to the election. It's probably on or about November 5th, and they're going to ask John Swink for this information, even though it's readily available to anybody. But I guess it's just a formality. It has to come from our flotilla, and it has to come from the secretary. And the way this is going to happen is we're going to be on the Zoom meeting, and when they take it over, they're going to send everybody an email with the ballot. And you're going to have to either, there's different ways of doing this. I hope it's not too hard for some people. I realize not a lot of people on our flotilla are computer savvy. But what you're going to have to do is have your email up in the background if you're using one computer, and you're going to have to minimize the Zoom program and bring up your email and vote, and then the reverse and come back to the Zoom meeting. Or you can have two computers if you have that, and have your email on one and the Zoom meeting on the other, or just have the computer up, and if you have a smartphone, you can bring your email up there and vote, whatever is easier. And I know that it's not easy for everybody, because I know just by sending out the information on the agenda every month for the meeting, and by the amount of people that attend the meeting, they're not reading their emails. And why they're not reading their emails? Because they have a lot of political stuff on, and people are sick of seeing it. Can't wait till the election is over. And for the other thing, there's all the stuff about COVID. How many people died this month? How many new cases? And people don't want to read that. So they don't look on their computers anymore, and they play games or whatever they do, but they don't like to look at that stuff. So caught up in that is our request to attend the online meeting with the agenda. So just to make sure that everybody knows and enough people come on, I mean, we only need 20% waiver, but 20% of the membership to have a quorum and run the election. But I'm going to send mail out to everybody with the instructions on there, because everybody opens a letter, because I noticed I sent out 11 certified letters, return receipt requested, and they all came back. So people open their mail. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send letters out to everybody. It's redundant for us that know about this, but for us, the other people, I hope they attend. So I'm going to pass the meeting on to Mike. And the floor is yours, Mike.
Okay, I'll just go quickly through the officer reports, see if they have anything that they would like to talk about. Bill, Public Affairs.
Sorry about that, Mike. I muted myself. Well, the big event obviously was the blood drive, which was pretty well attended. We covered it, as you know, in the newsletter. I guess, unless I missed something, that was the big event for the past month.
Okay, yeah, I think it was, definitely. Susan, anything on member training?
Yes, just one thing. If there is anybody who still needs the TCT or risk management for this year, I can't imagine why, but if you do, there are some online classes being given. There is one from November 10th, another one the 24th of November, and possibility for 2 in December. If anybody's interested, if they'll contact me, I'll be happy to send them the necessary information. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Dawn, is there anything on HR you wanted to report on?
Just minor statement. I finally got cleared through my COVID assessment and paperwork that I can start doing packages as long as I report to John when it's going to happen, which is pretty standard. However, the candidates that we had lined up that want to join the auxiliary are still waiting until the pandemic is over. So we may never see them. And I'm trying to get the word out there. I want to get together with Bill and try to get some leads out there, some information. I've been posting some videos and that are already pre-approved for the auxiliary within the military spouse network, trying to put the plug out there. We just don't have any potential candidates that are able or willing right now to go through the process. So I am able to do the packages as soon as we get a potential candidate, providing we all stay healthy and safe.
Okay. And let's see, young Bob is not here. Let's just go through surface operations, such as they are with Luke. If you have anything you want to talk about.
Would love to have a 45-minute report to give you guys, but I don't. We are shut down. I have 0 facilities available. I have no CX available. And I have 0 information about the mishap, which should have been solved by now, but I'm in the dark. So it's really horrible.
Yeah.
Because I cannot give you anything because I don't have any information. I would love to be able to go and put operations back together, you know, and get missions and patrols and so on, but I don't have anything. So, sorry, that's my report. There's nothing I can do.
Okay, Luke, I think, yeah, we all understand the situation there. And finally, Walter, did you want to mention anything on air operations? Which might going a little bit more.
No, I've got there's a flight scheduled on Saturday where we're doing some scouting work for the enforcement folks. I don't think Christoph's on the call tonight. I believe he's down for maintenance for the better part of the rest of the year. So don't think there's going to be a lot of flying going on anytime soon around here.
Okay. Okay, I think that's it, John. I guess, well, I've got the floor. Just one quick comment on the election committee. I did send an email out to everyone, I guess several weeks ago. We have 3 responses so far. I think you know they are who you are. If I think basically we have until, correct me if I'm wrong, John, we have until basically maybe the end of October. And then we have to, do the research. The committee has to basically confirm that the nominations the eligibility requirements have been met, right? So until the end of October before we have to close the nomination process. Okay, John, that's it.
All right. I don't know if you looked at some of your email, but just prior to the meeting, I sent out an application for district staff positions. Apparently, they don't just choose. You have a choice of if you want to be on a district level, you can put in an application. Some people have specialties and they want to share them and they want to maybe change things around. Being in the district is a cut above us. We're in the flotilla level, and there's the division level. That's the division commander and the vice commander of Division 12. And then you have the district of the larger area of South Carolina. And there might be things required of you if you go for one of these positions, because we're in a large area. You might be asked to travel because you have a specialty that you want to share with other people, or you maybe want to change things. And that's what's involved. I held such a position for 4 terms when I was in New York. I was ADSO, that's Assistant District Staff Officer. It's just like being a staff officer or flotilla staff officer, but you're just on the district level. And I was in charge of bridges, all the bridges in the tri-state area. And I ran they have a computer program for PATONs, which is private aids to navigation, or bridges. And the members would submit the information on the bridges. They find discrepancies, lights out, things like that. And if all the ducks were in order, I'd pass it on to the bridge office, and we would see things happen. We would know we would get the job done. Just an example: if a letter was produced, the letter would clearly state that the bridge owner, which is either the Manhattan Transportation Authority or somebody, would have 14 days to make the repairs. Otherwise, they would be charged $50,000 per day per discrepancy. And sometimes it went into that, and I made some money back for the Coast Guard. But things got done. You would turn things in, and you would see things get repaired on the bridges, so you know something was happening. Down here, I see the same discrepancies on bridges that we turned in, and I know the other flotilla turned in, and it wasn't repaired. So somewhere between here and Miami, where everything originates, paperwork's either getting lost or they're not receiving anything. But things are done differently down here, as I've found out, than up there. They have everything computerized. The same thing with the PATONs. They have a program called Harbor Master. And you input the information, it goes to Boston, they check it out, and then if everything's okay, then it goes out to the owner of the private aids to navigation, which is usually a town or a marina or a yacht club. And I had hoped that maybe I could bring the programs down here, because I got permission from the author that originates out of New Hampshire in the 1st Northern District, but they didn't go for it, and I think because there was money involved. But anyway, if anybody is interested in applying for a staff position, it could be marine safety, it could be HR. I put the application out. In fact, I had asked the division commander, because he put something out at the division meeting, and we never remembered receiving anything on that. So the next thing after I asked, then it went out to everybody. But so if you notice on my agenda, it goes to old business. Well, okay, it goes to old business first. Is there any old business anybody would like to speak about? Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Ms. Craig, just a quick question back on the elections. I hear you had 3 responses. So which position is having a little bit of a race this time then?
Well, you guys speak to the election committee.
Excuse me?
You have to speak to the election committee. Speak to Mike.
You haven't heard. Okay. I was just curious.
Mike?
Haven't really, sorry, I was on mute. A little hesitant because we haven't really had a chance to review the eligibility. I'd like to have our committee meeting first, and then I'll send out the list of names, hopefully in a complete list.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, back to old business. Going once, going twice. Now we're on to new business. Any new business? Okay, going once, going twice. Believe it or not, I got an envelope in the mail from the division commander. I have some awards, but I didn't know that until today. That's why it wasn't included in the agenda. So we'll start with that. Okay, I have an award for Richard, I think it's Willies or Wiles, for 10 years of valued service in the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. And that will get sent out tomorrow morning. Next, we have a service anniversary of 10 years awarded to Scott Heisler, our FSO DD, who got us the 3-star NACO award again. Then we have 10 years of service for Anne Marie Graham. We have 10 years of service for Philip Poole. Okay, and we have 5-year award for David Display with a new ribbon add on. Did I pronounce your last name right?
Plus.
Once. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, 5 years for Michael Young. Another one. You're getting a lot of ribbons there. You're going to need another rack. Okay, let's have an applaud for those people. Okay, and I have one for a retired member, Warren Onken. This is what they award you when you retire. He retired about 3 months ago. And last but not least, let's see, we have the Century Club Award. This award to Jacqueline B. Weskerna in recognition of completing 100 vessel examinations and/or program visits during 2019 in support of United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. Okay, got that. Then we will have one for her husband, Robert A. Weskerna. It's for 100 vessel examinations. And last, let's see, who else we got? We have more here. Wait a minute. And last but not least, we have another Century Club Award to Philip Poole. Way to go, Philip.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's the end. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Hey, John, before you do, I'm going to throw one other subject into the awards hopper. I got a couple of emails right before the meeting started, and I'd like to congratulate Luc Georget for successful completion of his qualification as a telecommunications operator. It took a long time to get this through the system, but it's in there now, and hopefully the paperwork and the ribbon or the star will be on the way for Luke. So for the rest of you that trained towards TCO, I'm hoping that this means that the pipe is thawed out and we'll be able to start getting you folks processed through to your qualifications as well. Way to go, Luke.
That would be good. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please?
Oh,
Okay, got Craig, second.
I'll second.
Bill Garvey, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next meeting
Aye.
is November 19th, which is the election. And we have a speaker for that meeting also. Hopefully the election will go quick. Okay, so long.
Good night.
Good night.
And I,
Good night.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mary.
Thank you, Mary, indeed.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you, Mary.
Sure.